Chair.
I'm going to call Sir William Sherrow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The House has been denied, sir, the opportunity and benefit of having this legislation scrutinised by Select Committee. We've been denied the opportunity of receiving the advice from that committee. The public has also been denied the opportunity of making submission to this bill. And, sir, we've been denied the privilege and benefit of the wisdom of local government New Zealand and the general population who have not had the opportunity to scrutinise this bill at all. We've been given 3 pieces of paper, sir, to try and make sense of this legislation. And earlier, my colleague, the Honourable Annette King, said that there is no regulatory impact statement for Part 2 of this bill. That is further denial of us really making good sense of what this bill is about. But it has been, I believe, sir, been characterised well by Andrew Little, the leader of the Labour Party. But I want to also say, sir, we've been expected to take on board the word of the Minister. The word of the Minister that because there's no regulatory impact statement on Part 2, he's asked us to believe him, that there is nothing untoward in this bill. So, but there is a range of rumours floating around in this place, sir, and one cannot feel concerned and uneasy about what this legislation really is about. And the image that comes to mind when the Minister says, you know, we've got to take his word for it, is the image of President Richard Nixon with his two peace signs saying he is not a crook. So, and I say that because when you look at Clause 9 of Part 2, it refers to the Housing Act of 1955. In the Housing Act of 1955, it gives powers to the Minister of Housing, gives powers to the local authorities to be able to take land for housing, state housing development. And then if you look at Clause 10, sir, it makes reference to the Public Works Act of 1981. And what it does is it removes any powers that were laid in Clause 40, 41, 42 of the Public Works Act. What it means, sir, is the Public Works Act suggests that if land was taken for the purpose of building state housing, and if that purpose no longer exists, then the land ought then to be made available back to the original owners. And Clause 10 says that right is now expunged. That right has now been destroyed. That right no longer exists. And if that young man there would just shut up a minute, I'll continue, sir. And the point I want to make here, sir, is there seems to be some conflicting aims of, we are told that the purpose of this bill is to increase the supply and make housing more affordable. How is that going to be achieved under this particular clause, sir? How is the removal of rights of people? If the land is no longer going to be used for the purpose of creating and building state housing, how is the purpose of building more affordable housing going to be achieved? I ask that question, sir, because this government is attempting to tell us that the purpose of this bill is to build more affordable housing. I can't see that happening. I can't see that happening when for the last 8 years this government has been aware of the growing national housing crisis. We have a crisis of not enough houses, not enough state houses. We have a crisis of people living in cars. We have a crisis of people living in...
As a point of order, David Seymour.
Mr. Chair, I seek your assistance with respect to Standing Order 1765, which states that debate in the committee stages should be limited to the objects actually instructed by the House that the committee should debate, not the overarching principles or purposes, which is what the majority of this member's rather erratic speech has been about.
Look, when Mr Speaker yesterday accepted the urgency motion, he made it clear in accepting the emergency motion and the points of order that came from prior to that regarding the content of this omnibus bill, that it would be a wide-ranging debate. And in part one, that has been so. In part two, I'm very mindful of what's being said and I'm listening very carefully. And from my point of view, if it stretches outside the realms, even though it is, there is some licence to extend it, then I would deal with it at the time. The member is correct in a sense that we should, in committee stage, deal with that, but the precedent was set when the urgency motion yesterday was put, and I'm complying with that ruling by Mr Speaker yesterday. So I'm calling Sir William Seo.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. The point I'm making is refers to clause 10. If land was taken specifically for the building of state housing and that purpose no longer exists, what I see, sir, is conflicting. This clause conflicts with the purpose of the bill. And I'm asking, sir, because we've been asked to take the minister's word for it, whether the minister, or any minister for that fact, who have made this decision, Mr Chairman.
David Seymour. I'm calling David Seymour.
Mr Chair, I'd like to direct my comments